Hello, and welcome to another edition of Hoover's History. Looks like today we're going to be going over improving society and also the fight against slavery. This is chapter 12, section 1 and 2 kind of combined. So we want to kick this off with the Second Great Awakening in the United States of America. Basically, we're going to look at, these are going to be large numbers of Americans. We're going to start with religion. Large number of Americans that would embrace the idea that they could actually play a role in their own salvation, because this wasn't the fact and or the actual the way it went down with the first Great Awakening. They didn't get to play a role in that at all, because basically it said, there's only so many people that are going to be saved, and as soon as that number is already filled up, then basically the room's going to run out and you don't have a chance. So now there's a whole turnaround with this, and this starts up in New York at the time. It's a fiery evangelical kind of awakening, and it's going to bring about two religions that's going to really boom about this, and that's going to be the Baptist and also the Methodist religions. They would actually gather together pretty much well over 20,000 people. So they had these huge, enormous tents, like Barnum and Bailey circus tents with literally, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. So it was this revival. Then in New York, it's also where the Mormons basically left from. It was basically known, New York, as the burned out state, because it's like a fiery message of basically fire and brimstone, and it's either you get right or you're going to be going to hell. So that's their kind of flip on that. And we'll get to maybe some more of that later on, but that's what I want to hit on with the religion aspect of it. And we'll get into an individual, and his name is Finney as well. So there's some individuals that come out of that Second Great Awakening as evangelists. Utopian communities is another part of this Second Great Awakening, and we already know utopia is kind of like heaven on earth. It doesn't exist. It's based on a religion and philosophy that sprang up throughout the United States between the 1800s and really for 50 years, so that'd be 1850. People came together with basically a single, common vision. The idea of a society that everyone, and this might sound familiar in history, that everyone would be contribute to the good and the whole as a group. And we could kind of look at this again, and I think of William Penn when we had Pennsylvania with his idea of a group of individuals working together as a whole. And this also includes on a commune or a community. This is going to be everybody shares in the work. They share in ownership of property. The family life would basically even be shared itself. There's big, communes, even past that in 1970s as well. Those were communes. Waco, Texas, that was a commune at that time. And, we have those individuals who have high charisma, and they have people that'll actually follow them and in these communes. So there's no such thing as a utopian world, okay? Jonestown's one of them. We talked, knows about. It's a bad drink there for for Kool-Aid there when he had that poisoned, and that whole situation went bad and sour real quick. So this religious revival of the early 19th century is really fueled two social and political movements that were actually going to have this enormous consequences of American history. Here they are. All right, number one, it's called the temperance movement, and that is going to be basically against. It's a war on alcohol, is what it is. The second one is going to be an abolitionist movement, and we already know what that is, and that's going to be about ending slavery. So those are the two movements there. So let's go over the temperance movement first. Basically, their goal was to discourage people from spending their money, their wages on alcohol and their spare time in saloons, and they did an awful lot of both. Basically, in this time, we're looking at 1770s during the independence, the Revolutionary War there, clear on up into the mid 1800s. It just gets worse and worse. And the movement really generally targeted men because, see, here's the deal with the females, with women. No respectable American woman would be ever seen in a saloon or a bar, okay, until really the 20th century. So that was looked upon as not a very good social thing to do. Kind of thirsty again today. So who led the movement? The women did, since the men are doing all the drinking. So, I mean, they did all kinds of stuff. They would basically striding into saloons, smashing all kinds of things, like glass windows. They'd have windows like. Also mirrors over the bar, and they would just go ahead and smash those things that are hard to replace, cost money. And then here's a popular picture of an individual, and she's got a hatchet in one hand, because they would basically cut open the kegs of beer and just let it spill out. What they did, just like what they did in the Prohibition in the 1920s. When they basically made illegal, which was the sale of alcohol. So when they found it, they would break open the kegs and then dump it all out. The women are doing the same thing here in this temperance movement. Just kind of think about it's just whiskey, rum, and other kinds of what we call spirits, and this liquid basically ran into literally the streams among the board floors. So that's a lot of liquor going down. So the movement was basically, it was very successful. It was very effective. So we look at the mid 1800s, like I said, 1850. You can see a national consumption of alcohol is going to drop. So the temperance, these advocates people who are for this temperance, they continue their crusade against alcohol even more, and throughout the 19th century. So we can look at 1917 when finally they have a pinnacle, which is at a peak of success with their passage of the 18th Amendment, which we talked about, which is the amendment to make alcohol illegal, and that's going to lead to prohibition because it prohibited the sale of alcoholic beverages, because it had effects like they're losing money, because of alcohol. It's affecting their health. It's affecting their mental stability, and it's affecting their family life. Just just like what alcohol does today with families as well. So, prohibition is going to be repealed. That means they're going to come back and relook at it and revote, and then vote it basically back the way it was and legalize the alcohol in 1933. Basically having proven that this resounding failure. So you could say it's a resounding failure on the part of the basically the enforcement of trying to stop alcohol. But really, it saved a lot of people, I believe, from being alcoholics themselves at that time, and we'll go over that some more. So this whole deal here with the next one is going to be the abolitionist movement. We go back to founding fathers, which comes off of my Abraham Lincoln was actually one of the first to actually form an anti-slavery society in North America. Some other names that might pop up every now and then would be Thomas Jefferson. When he wrote the Declaration of Independence, he wrote that all men are created equal. When you really look at that and break that down, who were equal, and basically those are people who could vote, I think, and you're looking at people who were white, male, had to own property, and they were adults. So they're more of elitists that was actually having that impact with those kinds of words when all men are created equal. We're going to get into some more temperance. We're going to go back on this just a little bit to actually, before we jump into the abolitionists, some numbers here on the drinking, and that's coffee. Americans drank, like I said, enormous quantities, and this might blow you away here a little bit, but their early consumption, basically at the time of the Revolutionary War, we talked about that. That was in 1770s, and basically it's been estimated that the equivalent of 3.5 gallons of pure, and that's 200%, 200 proof of alcohol for each person. So, and then we take a look at like 1790, where it actually even gets worse than that. American men actually began to even drink more, and when we say more, we'll tell you like by like the 1820s, we're looking at we talk about 200 proof, and that was 3.5 gallons. Now it's going to rise in the 1820s to an all-time high of almost four gallons per basically person then. So you're looking at just a sizable 3.5 gallons, and then you're up to almost 4 or more. So you're up to the half a gallon there of that 200 proof alcohol. So we're going to describe 4 powerful perspectives of basically of this temperance, this alcohol movement here, motivated these advocates to basically diminish this alcohol and shape the argument in their campaign. So we're looking at social order. That's a big word that comes out of that, was social order. Many reformers actually feared the drunkenness, especially particularly the increasing prevalence of binge drinking, and that's basically when you go on a what they call a bender, and you just drink more and more and more at once. That's binge drinking, so you're not doing a little bit at a time. Um, it's a threat to law enforcement. You have to deal with people who are making poor decisions, acting poorly, and these things don't change today. I mean, we're talking about the same thing, and this was back in 1800s. So, abiding society and also economic, prosperity. We talked about that. It's going to, dig in your wallet. And if you're, become too bad and too ill, you're not going to be able to work. You're going to be, drinking alcohol. And if you can't, then you're not going to be able to do your job well, and you're going to lose your job. So, we're going to have problems. So, how could men actually be responsible workers and actually vote as responsible citizens if they are basically, insensibly with drinking? So if they're very, they have no sense, no common sense whatsoever. And the big word right there is responsibility. So it's having to be responsible. Just because it's legal doesn't basically mean that you can abuse it or that's even right. Okay, so you have to call that on your own. Another cornerstone of the temperance reform is going to be the evangelical, religion that hit, and religiously motivated. The temperance advocates came to actually see drinking as a sin, and it gives way to basically deprived self that was incapable, obviously, with Christian morals. You have Christian morals, you have self-control, and then you have the spiritual awakening. So it just doesn't fit the religious kind of like culture that's going on now, having all this drinking going on. So, and then the fight. We look at we talked about damaging the family. It's not going to be able to function because you're not functioning as a father or as a husband. It's just your self control. You're out of control. And then medically, the health-minded reformers, they popularized this radical new way of looking at alcohol medically, and it does. We already know what it does today. I mean, it's going to affect your liver, and it's going to affect your state of mind, your state of being, cause depression. So there's all things that this alcohol can do. It's alcohol poisoning if you go on this binge drinking, so you can actually drink too much and die. So we looked at that, and we have the temperance campaign. Basically provided, was very successful, particularly in New England and New York. Because, we get New York, and we're going to talk about a little bit more about New York here with religion, and you'll get to that one here. By 1840s, basically the liquor consumption had fallen less than basically half of its previous levels, which was awesome. Hundreds and thousands of men actually signed pledges, and for total abstinences, so they wouldn't actually touch a single drop. And much of this change proved more or less to be permanent. That's a permanent change when you actually make it this kind of commitment. And since the mid 19th century, per capita, basically alcohol consumption in the United States, it says here for another number, has gone back to the 1820s levels. So it went back. So it's not good. I mean, it's starting to come back as alcohol, and that's in today's culture and society. So we're actually, regressing and not moving forward about that. So what does that say about maybe about your spiritual, morals or self control? That's got to be a little bit in question, since it was, questionable here in the Second Great Awakening. So we have to look at that. Okay, so because most Americans today basically approve of moderate alcohol use, these early temperance, reformers, with they're very passionate. Obviously, a woman walking around with an axe and cutting open, barrels. Basically, their moralistic advocacy about it, basically of total abstinence, so you don't actually drink a single drop, may have well actually seen basically both amusing and dismaying at the same time, but yet, it basically this reoccurring in this substantial number of men, saving them from alcoholism. They did, in fact, I think it was a great deal of good for American society when they went to this abstinence of not drinking alcohol, because they didn't have self-control. So if you don't have self-control, somebody's got to put you in check and bring control to you. So you just try to find a balance of that. You just can't abuse it. We can talk about now about the ministers here and the religious aspect. During the first Great Awakening, what they actually preached was God had already chosen who would be actually in heaven before you were even born. So that's definitely not a good thing, because then you couldn't have a choice of making that choice whether to accept that religion or not, and then be saved. So it's like there's no room in the hotel, and all they're sold out, and you're going to be out in the streets. That's not a good thing. So individuals must live without sin and urge others to do likewise in that awakening. So the second awakening is a little bit different, okay? So it comes down that you do have a choice, okay? You have the choice to either go to heaven or to hell. When you're born, you have a certain, sure, there is a certain age to where when you start to understand what is right and what is wrong, and then you're held accountable for your actions. We could talk about the African Americans, because one idea basically that shaped was to take the African Americans, and this has to do with partly of an abolitionist kind of view, because Abraham Lincoln was he was basically, when he was about 19 years of age, and he went down. I believe he had a trip down the Mississippi River when he was that age, and he saw his first slave encounter, and obviously he didn't like it, and that stuck with him, and he remembered that, and he had feelings for them, and he just could not understand why a people would stay in a situation where, in this case, a country where they're not welcome because they've been used as slaves, and even if they're free, they're still not equal to us, to other races. and that really crossed Lincoln's mind. Um, so a lot of people don't know that there were other deals made to help out the African Americans. They purchased land in Africa, which is got to be Liberia, and it's in Africa. So obviously, because liber means free, okay, in Latin. So that's an interesting fact. And then actually, Abraham Lincoln would come along in his presidency and sit down with leaders of the African American community, and he would offer them a chance, a way out, and they had purchased land in South America. So and here's the bottom line is the African Americans said, no, this is our home. This is where my roots are now, and they go back to their father and their grandfather, and they've been slaves. So this is, now they have an investment. Okay, so it's not like, now some did go to Liberia, but none of them went to. I don't think none of them went to South America. So that's their take on that. They said, no, we're going to stay. So that's, I don't know what that would be like, just to be rejected by your culture and the society in every single aspect, and with everything segregated and not treated as an equal. So that's got to be something to really stick it out and take the punches. So their goal was freedom, okay, and basically of the African Americans' goals of freedom and also equality with white people, and that's what their goals are for the abolitionists and the African Americans. So by 1826, there's going to be more than 143 anti-slavery, basically it's societies throughout the entire country. Many of them are going to be organized and ran by free blacks themselves, and the fight for abolitionists and equality, okay, is going to continue and lead both white and black activists. So they're going to have that, and we'll go ahead and talk about those individuals soon. So we have Nat Turner, that basically he was a slave and born in 1800s, and led a uprising, a revolt, an armed revolt against the white plantation owners, and shooting and killing quite a few of them, which put a real scare into the South. So we're going to look at it. So this scene of terror as Turner and his fellow followers killed any white people they came across. Basically, eventually 50 to 60 people fell victim because of that, and that has also an after effect, because then you're looking at and even innocent African Americans getting killed themselves in this rebellion, and they didn't have anything to do with it. It was basically Turner. So it didn't last long, so because of Turner's army was too small to sustain a war, and basically in the end they're going to be hanged. And then this southern states were very quick and to pass harsh new laws to basically curtail the few rights or freedoms that even slaves enjoyed. So they even cut those down even further. So we got an individual who comes on the scene, and his name is William Lloyd Garrison, and he is a white journalist. He's going to come out with a famous abolitionist newspaper called The Liberator, and in response to Nat Turner's rebellion. So, like Turner, Garrison, he didn't believe in waiting for freedom either, so he started writing his own paper. And there's just a little quote I want to go ahead and read to you. It says, "Unite me not to use moderation in the cause like the present. I am in earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse, and I will not retreat a single inch. I will be heard." So there's a lot of feeling there. He's not going to be, excused. It's not going to be. He's not going to budge a single inch. So what he believes in is complete abolitionist freedom for the African Americans. So that was an interesting individual there. So we'll go over some abolitionists who are well known. And the first one I want to go over is Harriet Tubman. And a lot of people know her as basically like Mother Moses, if you want to say. Underground Railroad is popular with her. And just, I'm not going to go over all that. I'm just going to go over her life here a little bit. Okay. So she's born into slavery, and it's not good for her in her earlier years. She faces basically physical violence was a part of her daily life. Tubman and her family, the violence that she suffered in her life caused permanent and physical injury. So there's scars to the back by the whippings, but we're going to go even further than that with her. So recounted a particular day when she was lashed 5 times, even just before breakfast. So 5 different times she was lashed just before her first meal. So that's not good. So she's going to carry those scars through her entire life as a reminder. So the most serious injury, though, occurred when Tubman was just an adolescent. So sent to basically to get dry goods from the store for supplies. She encountered a slave who had basically left the fields without permission, which is not a good thing. So the man's overseer demanded that Tubman help restrain the runaway so they can actually take him back. She refused. She would not help restrain this individual who left. And the overseer picked up basically a weight, and the weight of it was 2 pounds. So he took this 2-pound weight and actually threw it at her head. And it struck her in the head, and then Tubman's going to actually, because of this injury, for the rest of her life, she's going to basically endure seizures, severe headaches, narcoleptic episodes for the rest of her life. Here's another twist on it. She also basically experienced intense dream states, and which classified as religious experiences. So she has these like premonitions and these dreams, and so she has a lot of sleeplessness, where she can't get much sleep. So that's with Harriet Tubman, and so she has some mental problems there a little bit because of that rock hitting her. So she's going to escape from slavery and abolitionism. We're going to talk about that. So basically, Tubman made use of this network known as the Underground Railroad when she escaped, and basically that's when she escaped. So she was already using the Underground Railroad has already existed. It's 90 miles that she traveled to Philadelphia. Now, here's her words. When I found I had crossed the line. I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. And there was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees and over the fields. And I felt like I was in heaven. So, just to be free, looking down at your hands in a different way, the sun in a different way. And just thinking, man, this is heaven. And that's how she, basically revealed, how it touched her with the freedom with her. That's how she responded. So here it's obviously going to help others. So she helps an entire family make the journey to Philadelphia the same way that she did. This was the first trip that she took of many. But she is going to be able to guide her parents. And she gets the nickname Moses, okay, for her leadership. So she brings her parents, okay, and several siblings along, about 60 others, to freedom. So they're all going to Philadelphia and everything's going well, okay, until a law passed, okay. So this is going to be the dynamics here of escaping slavery changed in 1850. Basically, they're going to be able to go to the north and drag you back down south with the passage of the fugitive slave law. So in response to this law, Tubman can't go to Philadelphia anymore. So she rerouted the Underground Railroad, and now she's going to Canada, which prohibited slavery altogether, because it's remember, it's part British there, so they don't believe in slavery. They had abolished it well before we did. So Tubman remained active, doing this for quite a while. Then she's going to get involved in the Civil War and other things. So this is some kind of cool stuff that she does. Harriet Tubman remained, active during the Civil War, working in the Union Army as a cook and a nurse. And then Tubman quickly basically became an armed scout and spy. But this is one tough girl. The first woman to lead an armed expedition of war. And this is what she did. She guided the Combahee River Raid, which basically liberated more than 700 slaves in South Carolina. So that was her raid and her history-making moment. So that's a little bit on Tubman. I don't think you guys have ever heard of. Now the other individual I want to talk about is going to be Frederick Douglass, and check him out for a moment and some things that you don't know about Frederick. Mr. Douglass. We're going to go into his slavery issues also as a young kid. So this is a little different individual. So defying basically a ban on teaching, because you're not supposed to teach a slave to read or write, because that means they can be intelligent and have power, and that's not good. And then they'll be punished, and you'll be punished as well if you get caught. So he is taught though by a person named Hugh Auld's wife, which is Sophia, taught Douglass the alphabet when he was only 12 years old. So he learns the alphabet at 12. And then when Hugh Auld, because that was his wife, right? That Sophia. So Hugh gets a whiff of this, what's going on, and he actually forbid it. Okay, no more lessons. Douglass continued to learn from white children and others in the neighborhood, so he found another source to go to. Okay, so he read newspapers avidly. All the time. He's got something to read in his hands. Sought out all political writing and literature as much as possible. So this guy's got a fever for reading. Douglass actually was credited with the Columbian orator, and with clarifying and defining his views on human rights. So very well educated. So we're going to go more into his education here just right now. Douglas shared his newfound knowledge with other enslaved people. So why keep it to himself? So let's go ahead and spread around this knowledge. So there's a hired out to this guy named William Freeland. So they hire Frederick Douglass out, and they can do that. Okay, your overseer could. So they hire him out, and then so he gets to, get to spread more of it. So he taught other slaves on the plantation to read the New Testament in the Bible at a weekly church service. Interest was so great that in any week, more than 40 slaves, would attend these lessons. So, he's going to get in trouble. I mean, you can't hide 40 slaves from this. Although Freeland, that's the person he was hired out to, did not interfere with these lessons. So he knows what's going on, but he doesn't interfere. And that's his choice, right? The local slave owners were less understanding, though. The other slave owners locally were not well understanding like Freeland was. So they come armed with clubs and stones, and they basically dispersed the congregation permanently in 1833. So they scared them all away because of what can happen to you. So we go back to this individual called Thomas Auld. Took Douglass back from his son, which was Hugh, basically following this dispute of him getting, finding out that he was doing this in the church and having it shut down from the locals. So he's taken away, and his daddy gets him. So Thomas Auld sent Douglass to work with an individual called Edward Covey. And he was basically known for his reputation as a slave breaker, which is not a good thing. Covey's consistent abuse did nearly actually break, almost, it says nearly, break Douglass at the age of 16. So that was 4 years that he was doing all this reading. Basically, they're trying to break him psychologically, get into his head. Eventually, though, it says, however, Douglass fought back. So he didn't put up with it at 16. In a sense, rendered basically powerfully in his own autobiography, he says this, and he fights back after losing a physical confrontation, with Douglass. So that'd be Covey. So Douglass is probably on top of him, getting ready to beat his brains in. Covey never ever beat him again. So Douglass isn't going to put up with it. He's a strong kid. Obviously, he's got a strong will, strong mind, strong physically. So he just doesn't put up with anything at all. So that's kind of a shock there that somebody would do that with a breaker there, a slave breaker. So when we go to the Civil War, we're going to skip forward this on Frederick so we can wrap this up. By the time of the Civil War, Douglass was one of the most famous black men in the country. He used his status to influence the role of African Americans in the war and their status in the country. If you watch the movie Glory, you'll actually see him in there with Glory, and it's a very good film, and it's African Americans being used in the Civil War as soldiers. So in 1863, that's it. Douglass conferred with President Abraham Lincoln regarding the treatment of black soldiers, and he wants them in combat and also treated equally. And we take a look at supplies as well and pay. So he wants equality. So the president, Andrew Johnson, was basically on the subjects of blacks. So that's after Abraham Lincoln is assassinated, he talks about with Johnson as well. President Lincoln, though, he comes out with the Emancipation Proclamation, which is kind of misunderstood by many people. We'll get to that in a second. The Emancipation Proclamation, which took effect in January 1st of 1863, declared the freedom of all slaves in the Confederate territory, not in the Northern Territory, the federal lands. despite this victory, right, of him freeing, because Abraham Lincoln has a plan. He's doing the same thing that George Washington did when the British took away and offered freedom for the African Americans to fight for the British. But they're not going to use any weapons or anything like that. They're just going to basically take other jobs, cooks and teamsters and things like that, and they're on ships. So Washington was losing all of his basically labor in the South, which is going to hurt us, economically. So Lincoln takes the book right out of Washington, a page out of Washington's book, and he says, "Hey, you know what? I like the same idea. I'm going to hurt the South, so I'm going to take away, their labor and that force and hurt them." And so, then, despite this victory, though, Douglas is very upset. Douglas supported John C. Fremont over Abraham Lincoln in the election of 1864. So he just drops Lincoln, like a sack of potatoes, and takes on with Fremont, which is his competition, because of this. Douglas supported Fremont over Lincoln in 1864, this election, citing his disappointment that Lincoln did not publicly endorse suffrage, okay, which is for the black freedmen. So in other words, the right to vote. That's what they were really pushing for. So Frederick Douglass was appointed in several political positions following the war, and Douglass became the first African American nominated for vice president, basically of the United States. As Victoria Woodhull's running mate on what they call an equal rights party packet and a ticket. So I did say Victoria, so he's an African American male as vice president, and then Victoria would be a white female as president. So they're trying to break down all the walls at once. So